recording. All right. As still some more people are entering. And yeah, so this topic, some of you know that, I started to change my diet when I was 16 to my mom's great horror. I stopped eating meat, and she thought, oh, I was for sure going to get terribly ill. But I didn't. And so this is not to say that everybody should stop eating meat, obviously, but that's where my journey began, into researching food and researching different diets and training as a naturopath, and eventually coming to meat and being here, integrating it all, right? So a big part of my approach also in working with people is this, what we call now integrative medicine, truly taking in everything that from different traditions that are helpful to the person. And so, I often get the question asked when I see a client or with my students, should I follow this or that diet, or this great new miracle herb, or should I be eating this? Should I stop eating, like gluten, dairy, these popular things that go around? And my most recent one, and it really, I have to tell you, it shocked me, was, well, I only eat meat. And so I thought, oh no, I have to research this. I have to see what's behind that. And as you know, I research, I look at studies, I look at those aspects, and not just, I'm not, not from that generation that's only on social media and gets all their information there. And so I did. I looked into this seriously, and I thought, yeah, let's talk with the community about this, all these hypes, and how we need to think about that when we see clients who eat in what I would consider an extreme diet, right? So when you limit your food choices, so there can be any kind of extreme diet where the food choices are limited to only a few, what that does to us, and how can we understand what it does to us. And part of that is in the microbiome. And because I came to working with clients through naturopathy, of course, we have always looked at the gut and how the gut is functioning. The word dysbiosis was completely unfamiliar in the medical world, but in the naturopathic, we've known that concept for many, many, many years, and seen it relating to many chronic diseases, and always started there with our approach to whatever needed to be done in the different therapeutics, was to look at what can we do with the microbiome, right? So that's kind of the context of today. And let me see if I can share my screen, how that's gonna go. It looks like you all see my screen. And do you all see it change? Did the screen change? Okay, it's working. Yay. All right. So this is really what we're going to then look at. So how do we know whether what a person has decided for themselves, often, to based on maybe what they see on the web, mostly on social media, whether that's what they're eating, whether that's right for them. And as I said, the microbiome plays a big role in that, and homeopathy does too, and especially the meat approach, as you will see. So it's not just about remedies, but it is also about how do we bring a person to be in touch, to be aware of of them, even of the functioning of their intestinal tract, like how are they reacting to food and all of that, and what's their relationship to it. So that's the big question, right? Is what we're eating right for me? And many of us, we have a certain sense of what are better foods, what are maybe less healthy overall, in general. Many people have discomfort around eating, like they might get gassy, burpy, bloating, right? Maybe they get constipated, and then we see these videos that say, try this diet because it cured me of everything, right? And so here we are, the one where I thought, oh, that seems to be really quite limiting. And some people have called this carnivore diet the keto diet on steroids, because we know there's a lot of low carb diets, and I speak about them in our nutrition courses. And what I won't do this time is I'm not going to go through all those diets, because we've got the documents, right? In Holistic Nutrition Basics, I have a good document with various diets. And then in the Holistic Nutrition Coaching, I retake that document and go a step further with it in terms of how do we work with clients with those diets. So those are all accessible to you, either if you're in foundation, you'll have the Holistic Nutrition Basics, or when you're further along, you'll get the other ones as well. So the keto diet or the paleo diet, which are low carb diets, they are not no carb diets, like zero carb diets, but the carnivore diet is actually a zero carb diet. And I wanted to see whether there are any studies done on what this diet does, because those who are proponents of it, they say that it really did cure them of inflammation, of arthritis, of various different things. And when you look at the references, they all come back to themselves. So it's kind of like a nice little circle of, this is great, and these are the studies, but these are not studies. They were not studies. They are anecdotes, and which are, I'm not denying that anecdotes and case studies don't play a role, always do. Like in homeopathy, we use them too, right? We look at one person and see that as a study, but it has to be placed in a context. And so that's one aspect that feels a little kind of question mark, like, nobody did study this. How will we do if we don't eat any carbohydrates? So what do you think? What that will do? I've got a few questions for you here. So one of the arguments that are being used is that, in fact, historically, eating meat is the natural diet. The early humans, the pre-settlements and agriculture, ate only meat. So what do you think? Maybe if you can open your mics and participate in this.
False.
What do you think, Sophie?
Yeah, I think false too.
Yeah,
the vote is false.
Berries and different type of non-meat food.
No, I think that there was meat, but I mean, there was also berries, and there was also other things that they would eat.
Probably.
Yeah, shoots, like leaf shoots or roots or stuff like that too.
Yes, and so archaeologists who do, who dig up, have found not only in how the teeth and the mouth is organized, but also in leftover stool that you can find and analyze. They've seen that no, we never, any time in the history of humanity, as far as they can go back, only eaten meat. It's always been meat on, meat off, because you would maybe have a hunt, maybe there would be a lot of meat available for a short period of time, but then there would be whole periods where there wouldn't be meat, and so where there would be gathering of like what you said, right? Nuts and berries, shoots, any kind of plant matter that you can gather as well and eat as well. And this is found in those stool leftovers, and it makes sense given the kind of teeth and jaws that we have and intestines, the long intestines. You don't need that when you're only eating meat. Okay, so we're all agreeing. Anybody says no, this is true, or you're okay with my explanation here? All right. Now, the other argument that they say is that plants are toxic for us. They've got various types of plant toxins, and there's residual pesticides on them, so plants harm our health. What do you think about that?
Actually, there are plant toxins, but there is a way around them to protect ourselves, because the plants protect themselves against various predators, so to speak, to protect them. But like, for example, the lentils and the beans, etc., we are told to soak them over long periods of time. And even the nuts, they're telling us to soak and peel, so that we can get around this issue of, and of course, pesticides is a big thing, yes.
I think it's
And
also
yes,
how much you eat, like how much you eat of everything. It's all in equilibrium or balance, and yeah. So if you're like a duck and we stuff you with something, that's not the same thing. So it's equilibrium, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And also there are other ways of like using, let's say, apple cider in your salad or lemon. Then some plants actually help you to protect and disinfect.
Yeah, I was
exactly.
I was also gonna say
ahead,
is
Lucia.
that is the meats themselves. I mean, unless you buy organic, they can be full of antibiotics and hormones. So it just doesn't. This diet doesn't make sense to me. My second son followed it to lose some weight, and I told him I was against it, because I said there's a lot of vitamins and minerals you're not getting. Fortunately, it's not like a long-term thing. It was a short-term, and I still see him eating vegetables. So as long as he's eating vegetables, yeah, it works, because you're not eating carbs and you're going into ketosis, But at the same time, it's sort of like, what about the vegans who are plant-based, So they're getting full of
Yeah, well, I have
toxins?
more points, Lucia. So
Okay.
this is about the plants being toxic, right?
Oh, okay.
And so Deep is really right there about the phytic acid and some other acids that are sometimes in plants. It totally, said it perfectly there, that there are ways to go around it, and that in fact, it's never been proven that those are a problem. In whole cultures where, or subgroups that eat vegan diets, that's never been found a problem. And we know that legumes, even though they're like a forgotten food group in our modern world, because yes, they do take some preparation to get them edible, but they are eaten around the globe. There's different types, and every culture has their legumes traditionally, right? Because they're so nutritious. All right, okay, our number 3, it improves weight management, or it helps with weight management. So there, Lucia, you already answered this one, right? So you all think this is true?
Yes.
Anybody thinks this is false?
I don't think it's true. At
Uh-huh.
least of what I've seen.
Or maybe not on the
Uh,
long term in any case. It might hurt, it might help short term, but long term.
And it also is like, I'm speaking from my perspective. I had cancer. And then after, as I was going through the whole thing, I decided, and I'm also diabetic. And I knew the inflammation effect of sugars and carbs on the inflammation. So for the 3 years after my cancer thing, I tried this diet, and I was a strict vegetarian earlier. I became a meat eater, and my weight stayed stable, and the sugars were better also, since I was on, but I was not on a no carb. I was on a low carb, and I never stopped eating vegetables with it. But in spite of it, it helped me. But today I'm back
Yes.
and eating vegetables. Yeah.
I think it might help at the beginning, because automatically there's no carbs, so automatically there's this thing where you're going to lose weight. I don't think it'll help with managing it, but on the onset, I think that yes, there would be a weight loss, and that's for sure.
Because,
But I mean,
yeah.
yeah,
Weight management is just one tiny indication of a healthy human being. So weight management is not the whole thing as a holistic.
Exactly.
So if we talk
Yes.
about only put emphasis on weight management, it is off balanced.
It was.
So one thing that we can say about this, oh, sorry, Monica, you're gonna add something there.
I was gonna say, for more than 20 years, I was testing people for food intolerances using applied kinesiology. And so when people would tell me that if they go on a carnivore diet, they feel better, I think it's not because of the carnivore diet, it's because they're avoiding what they normally would have eaten. So if they feel better and weight management is easier, it's because they've eliminated the things that were causing a problem, not because of eating the meat. So.
Yay, thank you,
Yeah,
Monica. That's a very important point in all of this. So the things that we can say about weight is that any change in diet, when people start eating conscious and shifting something, they will lose weight. And they will feel better. That's just a general thing in the beginning when they first change their diet. Possibly because they're a bit more conscious eating, you eat more maybe also to your actual appetite, and you're not in the, eating, filling yourself up, right? There is that part to it. Now, what happens when you eat high protein is that your sense of being full happens before you have met the caloric needs of your body. So there is an advantage in terms of weight management in that sense, that you're going to stop eating earlier. And then because proteins are kind of toxic to the body, the kidneys need to work overtime, and a lot of water gets out. So the immediate rapid weight loss that can happen sometimes with high protein diets, such as carnivore, is a water loss. And because we've got many people have like a little bit of excess water in them. But yes, so there is an improvement in weight, but does it help in the long run? No, because a diet that is so strict, like any really strict diet, the pendulum is going to change, right? We are, energetically speaking, we are depriving ourselves from a balance in food. And so at some point, this is going to swing back. And as soon as the person is going to stop the diet, like with any weight loss diet, they will gain weight back most of the time, and sometimes even more weight than they had to begin with, right?
I have a question for the carnivore diet. Doesn't it increase the uric acid in the body? Because yes, the carbohydrates make inflammation, but I think the carnivore diet also makes bad inflammation, and it's all the arthritis and rheumatism and no?
So this is our next true or false,
Oh,
because a lot of them claim it decreases inflammation and it improves their digestive capacity. So your question falls right in there. Very good. What do you think?
false.
It does decrease inflammation, but obviously it is too extreme, and we don't know the long-term effects of just eating meat and how damaging
Well,
or not.
Does it decrease inflammation?
Yes, I would say
think
definitely.
Long term?
I think so.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't. It might feel better.
Yeah.
And more because of what Monica was saying, because among the things that you're eating, there are some that are creating the digestive upset, and less so because you're not eating carbs. Because you'll see later, I'll show what the type of fatty acids breakdown that comes from meat versus plants, and the type of microbiome in the long run. In fact, it increases inflammation. Kayla, you had a question. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to share something. So I was actually like,
Yeah.
when my parents conceived me, they were vegan. I was born vegan, and they maintained that diet up until I was about maybe 5. And when they introduced meat, it did something to my organism, my body. Like, it was a shock. Everything changed for me. And when you talk about long term, I'm telling you, like, my gut and the inflammation levels of my body are outrageous. And when I have like experimented with this, especially when I did the nutrition and foundation and try to really monitor diet, when I went back to vegetable and those legumes, my body kind of, it like went down in inflammation. Every time I eat meat, it's like, it's crazy. But I think there was like a huge disturbance in that. So honestly, from lived experience, I can attest to that it does not decrease inflammation in the long run. And in fact, it has like harmed my gut in a severe way. So I'm actually just trying to figure out a balance again, and find that health that I remember feeling when I was so small. Like, I was so energetic, so healthy, and I didn't have pain. So I just wanted to share that, because in my experience, lived experience, it does not um, decrease inflammation. It actually hurts a lot.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. And I think, that when we changed things in our diet, and we'll look at this in a moment, and there are certain ways that we need to go about that. And so the other way can be true too, that people say, I can't digest the legumes, the beans and the lentils, right? So, but we'll get to that. But yes, so it's I think the jury and the judge is out around the inflammation. There might be an immediate sort of improvement, but in the long run, it's not true, because of how the microbiome changes.
Carla, hi.
Yes.
Hi.
Hey, Rick.
So I just wanted to say, I don't often get involved. I like to listen, but when it comes to meat, some people also will find an improvement, because we do eat meat, but we eat more balanced. We eat a bit of everything. That's healthy. But I find that with meat, sometimes also people are very different. So when we talk about disease, meat is not the best thing when there's disease, because there's cytokines and it creates more inflammation, and it is still an inflammatory food, especially if it's not totally clean. But with diseases like cancer, you have to avoid. But also I find that people handle it and some don't. And I I did some research on it, and sometimes people need certain enzymes to be able to break them down. So if like I know a lot of people that have done their research on their own bodies, and they didn't have the enzyme they needed to break down the meat. So they weren't even allowed to touch
Yes,
it.
so this we'll get to this this issue of how they introduce and what can happen, you know. Yeah. So Ilinka, one more, and then we'll keep going.
First, number 4, I didn't hear any addressing of increases digestive capacity. Is that what you were mentioning before, that people feel more full faster, or is that a different issue?
No, okay, so this is about the enzymes and about whether it goes through, how it goes through the digestive system as a whole, and whether it gets completely, you know, broken down or not. And the only thing we can say about that, when you eat high meat and as well as high fat, the liver is going to produce, or the gallbladder is going to eject more bile into the intestinal tract. This is also actually part of why inflammation eventually does happen, because there will be more bile salts and therefore a type of bacteria that can live in that environment, because they're quite harsh, you know, and so so the only part that increases, we could say, is that there's more bile ejected into the small intestine, right? Now, of course, when we eat plant foods, the fibers, you all know, the fibers are undigestible carbohydrates, right? Our body does not absorb those. And who lives on those are the bacteria, right? It's our microbiome. They live on the fibers. And so, yes, there is going to be more waste, if we want to call it that, at the end of the digestive tract in a plant-based diet, or in a diet that has a lot of plant foods. Because all of that undigested fiber that helps move the mass and the stool forward, and that helps you to be able to have a good bowel movement, those are waste, right? So it really depends on what you mean with, like, does it increase the digestive capacity or not, right? It's like, yeah, meat will not have that kind of waste. It'll be another kind of waste, but more in terms of uric acid and urea and those kind of molecules that the body then needs to remove because they're quite toxic. And people have a susceptibility towards gout. They will get extreme gout attacks on this kind of diet, right? When they eat an excessive amount of meat, because that's what you can say that this is, right? So it doesn't mean that meat eating is bad. We're really talking about excess here. And the issue of the vitamins and minerals is, you know, obviously there's one vitamin that we only get from the plant world, and that's vitamin C. And in the arguments that they're using in terms of in favor of the carnivore diet, they're saying, well, we only need vitamin C because we're eating plant food, because we're eating carbohydrates, and therefore we need the vitamin C for the sugar. But that's completely a misinterpretation of the role of vitamin C, because it takes part in a lot of enzyme processes, like all our vitamins and minerals, right? They are like coenzymes. And it's also a main part of structure of, because not part of it, but in the production of collagen, that is part of all our structures in our body. Collagen is a protein. And when vitamin C is completely absent, we'll get scurvy, right? You all are familiar with that. Ilinka, you still have your question? Your hand is up.
Yeah, well, I wanted to say something about this inflammation and feel good thing that happens at the beginning of the carnivore diet. Just from what I've noticed around me, you know, I've noticed around a lot of people cycling through this. And I wanted to say that I think it's not fully linear. Like, food also has to do with ethics for many people, and that's going to influence the reactivity to what we eat, right? So for a lot of people, in my experience, choosing, for example, a strictly non-meat diet is also from an ethical perspective. So for some people, it's more aligned, and for some people, maybe it's what they think, but they're not fully aligned energetically. So then going to carnivore, they're just letting go of that pressure on themselves. So that's what feels good and feels less inflammatory for some people. You know, so I think that's part of the process for some people, not for everybody, obviously. And, you know, it doesn't matter what the content is, it just matters is it aligned or not with that organism, I think.
I think what's interesting what you're bringing up here is that, you know, we have a tendency to only look at the material aspects of things, right? And these questions really is kind of a little bit that way, but we're at least we're homeopaths. We also know that there is energetic, a much larger context to everything, including the things that we eat. And we know that they've got a energetic value in terms of yin and yang. They've got, we've got our relationships to them, you know, in terms of the emotional aspect. So you're absolutely right. Like that's a really important one. And, you know, I'm just gonna show you that, you know, one of the people publishing on the carnivore diet from a reflecting, like a dietitian from a reflecting on the good and the bad of it, like her conclusion in the end is like, you know, that if we really want to be aligned with the planet, which, you know, we all say that we are, right? If we think about planetary health, then this diet is the ultimate selfish act, he says, you know, because it's really so focused on the self of getting maybe some personal gains. So I thought just throw that one in for you all. Rachel, you had a question?
Yeah, I just had a question. So, if we look at if we go back to the other slide, the previous one, where it says number 5, it supplies the vitamins and minerals. I didn't get the answer. So does it supply like all the needed vitamins and minerals, and the only thing missing is vitamin C, or is that false?
No, why I brought up the vitamin C is because it is such an important vitamin.
Yeah. Oh, no, that I understand, but
apart from, yeah, so it does not supply all the needed vitamins and minerals. It's false.
So, okay.
Because it lacks vitamin C. It's also too low in potassium. It's too high in some of the other minerals. It's too low in magnesium, because magnesium we get from the plants, as you know. But there's some other good minerals and vitamins in there, like there's zinc, there's selenium, there's, you know, so there's
Vitamin
B12,
K.
you know, that's lacking in the plant kingdom, right?
Vitamin K is in plants or meat? Vitamin K. Plants.
I think
plants.
Yeah, but the whole blood, because vitamin K, a part of that, its role is of course in blood thinning and blood viscosity. So I think that one is not so bad in terms of being just on eating meat, you know.
The
but
B12.
but some other ones are. But
B12.
it's a plant. As B12 is in the meat, right, and it's not in the plant. So plant world. So, but in terms of the answer to this, I would say no. There are some really important ones lacking. Okay, so what's the, you know, our saying about you are what you eat, you know, is the microbiome, right? And so we are what we eat, all 30 trillions of us, because we got quite a lot of living organisms that are relating to us, right? And they have a really important role in, like, we would not be able to live without them. right? So, and there's about 38 trillion bacteria. There's about 30 trillion human cells. So there's just about a little more bacteria than there's human cells. But if we look at variety in terms of gene expression of DNA, then of course 90% of DNA that we could find in and on a human comes from the bacteria, and there's only a small percentage that comes from human DNA. And so in that, they are the symbionts, they are collaborators that help us on a lot of different levels. And that a big part of that is the immune system. But another part of that is the digestion itself. They digest a certain number of food particles for us, and therefore help in the provision of certain nutrients, including the B vitamin, right? It's part of the microbiome help for us. So the training of the immune system in babies after they are born comes in large part from the microbiome. And that is then a protection from infections and autoimmune disorders. If we have a good trained, well-trained microbiome, or well-trained immune system, I would say, we have less allergies, less infections, and less autoimmune. And the microbiome really starts out with the beginning of life after birth, because there's very little bacteria in the fetus, in the developing fetus, before birth. So, but it gets its first implantation, we could say, like talking about fecal implants, this happens during a vaginal birth, right? The baby comes out, it goes to the vagina, so it gets in touch with all the bacteria that are in the vagina. But then it also gets in touch, because the face is down, the mouth towards the anus, it gets immediately already in contact with the mother's microbiome in the gut, from the gut. And then, of course, if they're being breastfed, it continues to provide microbes, as well as different what we call prebiotics, like the human milk oligosaccharides and glycans that feed those bacteria, especially the bifidobacteria, which are very present in early childhood. Right? They're not so much there in adult microbiome. So the microbiome changes over the life.
So is this a problem? Sorry, is this a problem with cesarean? Is it a problem with cesarean births?
Yes. So we see very different microbiomes depending on whether the baby was vaginally or born or with a C-section, and then how they were fed. So whether it's breast milk or whether it's formula. And you'll see that by the time that they get an adult, more an adult balance of microbiome, and in fact that is after they stop breastfeeding, that starts to change. And you see here, if you just like this little picture kind of shows, they basically have the microbiome of their mothers, right? The adult microbiome by the time that they are about a year old. And but the microbiome, what we are discovering is that it's not so much which cells are present in there, although that plays a big role, but the biggest role is played by the diversity of cells in the microbiome. And if you see this picture here in the 4 days after birth, the two vaginally born pictures are much more varied than the C-section one. This is one of the things that we see, is that a baby born by C-section has a much more limited microbiome. All right, so
do they actually, Carla, do they actually, for the babies that have a C-sectioned, do they actually catch up at some point, or would it be better to to, how can I say this? Give off probiotics or prebiotics in that, in order for them to catch up to, or do they ever catch up to the ones that are born vaginally? Or not?
Well, I think what we can say is that because they don't have the variety and the type of bacteria that you get when you're born vaginally, so you have more skin type bacteria, right? Because that's what they come out via just the skin, right? So they get more skin type bacteria, don't get bowel type of bacteria. And so the training of their immune system in that first year of life happens differently.
Okay.
And, you know, and it's, the jury is out, although, I mean, we see the products, you know, when we go to the health food stores, but the jury is out about how much a probiotic mixture of which is usually lactobacillus and bifidobacillus, how much that will help. You know, that we're not totally, that's not totally clear yet whether that's the way to go. But if they get breastfed, yes, they will catch up to some extent. You know, they will catch up more. And then, of course, it's everything, like, you know, who hugs them, who cuddles with them, you know, who, and that's for adults too. Who do we kiss? Who do we have pets? Do we play in the garden, in the soil, right? Because one of the things that we do see is that soil-based bacteria are very important for helping our microbiome. And it's sort of interesting because already many years ago, they saw a difference in people developing Alzheimer in terms of those who were gardeners and those who are not. The gardeners have less of a risk of developing Alzheimer's. And I'm a naturopath. I read this, I think, oh, that's the soil-based bacteria. Well, I have not ever seen anybody else come to that conclusion, but I think that's just about, you know, yes, there is maybe the having your hands in the soil, I don't know, you know, being close to the earth, all of those kind of things. But I also think there possibly is some of that, you know, the benefit of the soil-based bacteria. And so having your own garden, eating food from your own garden, it's not all possible for all of us, you know, but it would be helpful. Yeah. So, and then, I mean, you see that there are many other things, right? Like, have we gotten any medication? There's lots of medication that have an influence on the microbiome, not just the antibiotics, any kind of steroid, the contraceptive pill, for example, really also has an impact on the microbiome. So there's all these other things, what people are eating, and even whether they exercise or not, right? Those things change the microbiome, and therefore their protective functions and their metabolic functions and their structural functions, right? It's an important part of us, so not to ignore, right?
Yeah, and dogs definitely help our microbiome when they're in our space. They help us exchange the microbiome.
What I guess, you know, the conclusion that, and this is like the main takeaway for today, is the bigger the variety of the microbiome, the better it is. So animals, pets, they contribute to a bigger variety of microbiome. And the Western, you know, super processed diet, because it's really about, do we cook ourselves and make things, or do we eat processed food? And, you know, in the American diet, our SAD diet, you know, standard American diet, 60% of calories of the average American come from what we call ultra processed food. And what that does is that those don't feed any bacteria, right? Those, so we have a lot of species of bacteria, like, so the microbiome is going the same way as nature is going. We are losing diversity, and the diet really is the most important cause of that. And when we go to people who eat more the traditional diet, who live closer to their food, who maybe even are more agricultural, they definitely have a much wider microbial diversity. So the diversity is key. And so given that the healthiest part of the microbiome are fed by plant foods, it's the diversity in plant foods that is key, because they feed on the fiber, right? And you learned this, of course, in Holistic Nutrition Basics already. Like, we've got various kinds of fibers. We've got those fibers that we call soluble, not because they dissolve and they get absorbed, but because they dissolve in the liquid in the small intestine, and therefore provide bulk. And then we've got the fibers that help more the large intestine and to create more of a movement, a speeding up of the stool through the large intestine towards having better bowel movements. We've got they call resistant starches, right? That also only get they get digested, or not digested, but they get worked on by the microbiome in the large intestine. And so these are all food for the microbiome. So they are all prebiotics. So you don't have to go out and buy an expensive prebiotic, just eat your vegetables and eat your plant food. I mean, it's not all only about vegetables. Now, the good thing about vegetables is that they deliver a lot of nutrients with very little calories. So for those who are looking out to manage your weight and to reduce inflammation, eat your vegetables, because they have this, apart from vitamins and minerals that are recognized, they've got something that we call phytonutrients, right? And phytonutrients, for me, they are vitamins. They are essential. We can't live without them. Those phytonutrients protect us against cancer. They help with inflammation in the digestive tract, or repair, the mucus lining, etc. So eat your vegetables and eat a variety. So, this is the kind of thing that we see. We still, I think it's still really clear that those diets that do the best for people in the long run, that are sustainable, are the traditional diets, like the Mediterranean or the Asian diets, the traditional diets, Japanese, Vietnamese, etc. Like those, Chinese, the diets that have a large variety of plant foods, and that eat more natural, closer to how those things come out of the ground, right? Not so processed. Now, how much fiber? Here also it's recommended 28 to 40. What's actually consumed on average is only about 15. And now what microbiome scientists are saying is that you have to have at least 50 grams per day of fiber. And I thought, oh, I have no idea what that looks like in terms of amount of food. So I did a little chart. I was just playing around. And so, taking into consideration the suggestion that we need to eat about 250 grams of vegetables a day and one fruit. So start out with that. So 100 grams of broccoli. So obviously I only took one type, but we like to do diversity. And the diversity doesn't have to happen in the same meal, right? We're talking about diversity between meals. So the broccoli, the butternut, and the blackberry. So we've got our vegetables and our fruits covered. And then we got some seeds, we got some fats, we got some grains, we got some legumes, grains, oats, legumes. So, and then of course, you all know this, but I thought I put it in this chart anyway. Any meat or fish you would eat, it has zero fiber, right? Eggs, peas, none of that has fiber. So this, I was a little bit relieved. This comes 40. And as soon as we put in legumes, see how much easier it is to come to that 50 grams that is being suggested. So it'd be a good thing on most days to have some legumes. Now we're gonna come to that in a minute, because if you're not used to them, you might get a lot of gas. So one way that we reduce gas from eating legumes is how we prepare them. And that I do in Holistic Nutrition Basics. I got that there, like, you know, you have to soak them. The best is to soak them so long that they start to even get a little sprout out, because then you've definitely transformed all of those oligosaccharides that can cause the gas, and we have to introduce them slowly, which means microdosing, like a teaspoon. I'm serious about that, you know. So if somebody says they can't eat them, don't accept that as a fact for the rest of their lives, because they are really important. And so we go a little bit at a time. And I'll also tell you, there are some to start with that are better than others, that are easier to digest than others. Okay, Deep and Rachel.
Yeah. Carla, I was going to ask, does pressure cooking help also here? The lentils and the beans that are harder to digest, along with soaking them and whatnot? Pressure cooking?
Maybe. What I have found, also in personal experimenting and eating lots of them, is that it makes a difference how fresh they are.
How what they are?
So, for example, how fresh.
Fresh.
So
Okay.
have they been around? Yeah. So of course they're dried, but do you eat them in October when they're harvested, you know, in September? Or do you eat them the year later in September when the new harvest is not out yet? You're going to have a little bit more. You're going to need to soak more and pay a bit more attention to that. You know, to my great surprise, in Honduras, where, you know, most of you know that I've spent a lot of time there, and you eat beans 3 times a day. I had no difficulty ever with feeling gassy. And I can sometimes, like chickpeas, or, you know, there's certain beans that I can get gassy from, but I never had. And I looked at how they prepared them, and yeah, they'll soak them for a bit, but
and there's one more thing. Yeah, I want to share with you.
They're harvested all year round, right? So it's not just like one harvest like we have in the northern countries, where you have the winter and you only have one harvest. Now we're getting close to our time, so I have another topic I wanted to at least open it up, start it. So if we just move through this a bit quicker, and then we can see, because there's probably some people that are going to want to leave at 12. So, but then we can do these other questions after 12. Okay? Just hold on to them. So some of these fibers then produce gas, and so the best legumes to introduce are the smaller ones, the mung beans, the very small lentils, the green, both the green and the black ones, and to sprout them, as I said. So here is a where you can see the inflammation when you don't feed fiber to the microbiome, what's going to happen there. And oh yeah, there actually was a study done with switching diets between meat and vegetables. And so this is very interesting. So one group ate a carnivore diet, the other group ate a completely plant-based diet. They ate it for 5 days, they stopped for a week, and then they switched to the other diet. They switched it around. And then they went back to their regular diet. And which was for most of the group, was an omnivore diet. There was one vegan in there who did the carnivore 5 days. But what they concluded out of this is that the microbiome actually can change very rapidly. And they think this is probably evolutionary heritage, because at the time of the hunter-gatherers, we would have to switch it obligatorily, right? There would be maybe some meat sometimes, and then there wouldn't be. But the diet has the biggest impact on the microbiome, but it can switch very quickly. And we're talking here within 24 to 48 hours max. It has changed. So it's really quite convincing. Now, the other part that you all know already is that the microbiome, the gut, is often called your second brain, but it's actually the first brain. If we look at, again, evolutionary, pre-human, evolutionary through animals, the gut is the first to develop and to have, functions as a functioning, what we kind of like, organ, I guess, as the one with the power of making decisions. And the brain, the neurological brain, only developed later in evolution in the higher animals, right? And so there is strong evidence that there is an influence between the intestinal microbes and the brain, both in terms of behavior and in terms of choices of food. It might direct you to eat certain things. So that's the whole issue also of cravings. And we also know that certain neurological diseases, such as autism, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, that there are things in the microbiome that are quite different from healthy people. And so especially in the amount of bacteria that they would have, so much lower numbers. And so we can't, we can't deny this. We have to work with it with food. We have to work with it also with ourselves. And I just wanted to tell you, Netflix just came out with a cute documentary, if you're interested in seeing this, about the microbiome and its relation to health. And their conclusion too is eat variety of plant foods. But of course, we also know, and we are homeopaths, we work with people who struggle with, their cravings and with their changing their diet, right? And so our homeopathic case taking is extremely important to help change the relationship to food, and break habits that maybe when we were a child, it was, the brain associated. Well, actually, this goes all the way back to being hunter-gatherer, because the high caloric foods, like for now in our modern diet, this would be represented by cake and maybe by meat. But the high caloric foods that you would need, like the brain would create a reward response, and so that you would remember where you found it and that you can go back there, right? So there is a historical need for this, for why this reflex, I guess, or this neurological system came into us that we call the reward system. And how do we undo that? How do we get our brain to also feel rewarded when it eats broccoli, or when it eats, a huge pile of vegetables? And so this is where again, it's a little video, might be nice to watch it. But what their conclusion is that awareness is the key. And so our homeopathic coaching is a really important part here, and in terms of breaking the habits of going for foods that are maybe less healthy for you, and which is really getting in touch with how the body feels when it eats that, and versus how the body feels when it eats a healthy food. And it really does make a huge difference. It switches things. When you feel yucky after you've eaten something, you know, full and bloated, and you really get in touch with that, that makes creates a new piece of information in the brain. And so, you know, set up a coaching session, experience that, you know, firsthand, because this is what you're being taught in level 2, for those of you who are not there yet, is how do you get in touch with, you know, and this is much larger than just diet, but around diet, this is the one big way of how to make changes. And in terms of the microbiome, because I wanted to share this document with you that I made, that we have the bowel nodes that can help us to change the microbiome. And I know I'm over time, so maybe this is going to be part 2 to this webinar, and maybe we'll get back in July or something, and I'll really dive into the bowel nodes with you. You know, they are homeopathic potencies. For those who are beginners in our training, they're homeopathic potencies of a number of the gut microbes. And it's sort of interesting how these came about, because it was observed that particular homeopathic remedies, very common ones like sulfur, lycopodium, they would increase a particular type of microbe in the stool of people. And these homeopaths about 100 years ago, Bach and Patterson, they would be observing, you know, and they even observed the people, like how they would behave in a buffet and which foods they would go to and all of that. And, you know, so there is like characteristics that we give to those nosodes. Now, most of them have not gone through a homeopathic proving. So what we know about them is purely clinical, but they are extremely helpful in bringing back a better balance into the microbiome and therefore into health. So the details of this, maybe I'll keep this part. One of the things I wanted to say about that, so I'll share the document. In fact, I can't do that because I'm sharing my, oh, maybe I can. Here, I'll share the document. I know there's a lot of messages that I didn't see, but I'll share the document for you. But the place to start, and especially for those who are beginning, and you know that I work with the Homeopath Thérapeutes Sans Frontières, HTSF, the Homeopaths Without Borders organization that has a particular way of using homeopathy in clinical practice, and both in first line and in chronic. And in first line, we've got 2 complexes that the names maybe already tell you something. So one is particular drainage, helps better functioning of the liver and the kidneys, and decongesting those. And the other one is called intox, and the intox has a very broad range of uses, but one is to improve the microbiome. And so even a simple way to start with people that have chronic problems would be to use these 2 complexes. They are available in Quebec from Schmidt-Nagel, but we've now found ways for them to get ordered and even sent to the US. So Schmidt-Nagel doesn't send to the US, but parapharmacy which I think we give the website also in first aid already in foundation as a place to get remedies. They will order for you and they will send to the US. So so a simple way is to start with these two. They can be taken together, and you take them in the evening around 8 or 9, because you really want to work on repair. And so this goes a bit outside of today, but when we look at the functioning of the organism energetically, we know that repair happens in the night phase, especially the liver works there, but also the kidney. And during the day, it's the cortisol, it's the active time, right? So given that we want to do repair, we would take these in the evening. That doesn't mean you can't take them in the morning. You can, but you know, in this way, we really affect the repair of the organism. And as you know, most of the time, the core remedy, we suggest it to be taken in the evening. Like, it's the same kind of idea, right? We want that first initial entering into the organism, for that to be during the relaxation time, during the nighttime. All right, so I'm going to stop my sharing here. 3 weeks. This is a start. Yes, and then you can see what happens, and maybe you do once a week, or you do once a month, or you know, you can then see what the person needs. But the initial start would be for 3 weeks. All right, so your takeaway, right? Variety in foods, and microdose the gassy foods. And of course, there's these other aspects that we bring into all of our nutrition teaching at Meet, right? That the foods that are closer to your culture are easier for you to digest. The foods that are in the season, they're easier for you to digest, right? So we always make those attempts, we try. And you eat simple within a meal, but then you vary between the meals. There is no miracle diet and no supplement, you know, that's going to be able to change all of this. There's really, you know, just that make these changes and help your clients to make them through your sessions and through good core remedies and feeling better and having more energy, you know, because you'll have to find ways to put in your day some time to cook. But that's kind of the way to sustainably improve your health. So it's a lifestyle change. And homeopathy is really helpful in all its ways to make that lasting change. All right, sorry, I went a little bit over time and I didn't go into the bowel nosodes, but we'll do part 2.
Yes, we need it.
Okay.
Yeah. Carla,
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, do you have the...
I have.
Okay, Rachel had her hand up for a while, and then Nada.
Okay, so I have a little question. Well, it was concerning the beans. And is it okay to use them from the can, or do we have to soak them? Is it better to soak them, or can we buy the can? And is that an equivalent, or it's not? You know, and then if you do soak them, like you soak them for half a day, I think it is, and then you put them in the fridge, or you cook them, and then how long do they stay in the fridge for, or do you put them in the freezer? Like how, or is,
No,
you know?
no. Well, so go look. There is a handout in I think it's in the protein chapter of Holistic Nutrition Basics on how to do the beans. You soak them. If you change the water, like if you want them to go to sprout, you know, it will take a few days, but the minimum is overnight, right? We always say, like, do the overnight soak. And But if you want to soak them longer than 24 hours, you have to change the water. And so you throw the water off because that's where some of those phytic acids are. So you throw, and oligosaccharides, you throw the water off, you rinse them, and then you put them with a lot of water. You put some helpful herbs like marjoram, oregano, basil. All these aromatic herbs are good for softening. You can put some garlic and onion that will help soften. Like it's really that outer layer that's very high fiber that, you know, that's hard to digest for people. And so you soften that with those bit of salt. They need salt with the cooking. So these are different things you can do.
Okay, and the can is not an equivalent.
So the can has not been soaked, right? So anybody who has the least little bit of problems with beans, they're going to be really explosive after they eat beans from a can. And they'll say, I can't digest beans. Well, it's because the beans were not prepared properly. And yeah, Maya is adding kombu. So kombu, seaweed, really good way of bringing minerals, because the more minerals there are in the cooking process, the easier it is for the beans to then soften and become digestible. So that's a very excellent idea.
Can I add something to this? That when you're cooking the lentils or the beans, always wait till there's a foam on top. And that foam must be removed and thrown away before you close the lid of the pressure cooker, for example. Or even if you're doing slow cooking in a pan, remove the foam that comes to the top.
Those are those indigestible things. So thank you, Deep. But you know, if you put it in a pressure cooker, you won't have that chance to take off the foam. And so there, it's again those beans that are easier to digest, like the small lentils and the mung beans. They will be fine. And if they're fresher, they will produce a lot less foam. You'll have noticed that. You know, the closer they are to harvest. So big difference there. All right, Henry, you're next.
Okay.
Oh no, I had Nada. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to ask about the presentation, not the nozzled ones. First, like, are you going to send it to us, right?
Yeah. Always. Yes.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, that's it.
Yes, you'll get that. Yes. Henry.
Okay, I just wanted to add, because I come from a country we all love beans there. So yes, to leave it one night into water, but by the moment you are going to cook the beans, don't use that water. Some people use that water because they say that they give more flavor. So throw that water, because all the gas kept on the beans now is in the water. So throw that water and use another kind of water to cook the beans. It's going to help.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, it's funny because I went to Costa Rica. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you're really sensitive, you might even, you know, when Deep saying take off all the foam, you might even at that point change the water and then put in the salt and the things that I said. So you change the water even after it first comes to a boil, to really to get rid of the most possible of those aspects that cause gas.
And add turmeric also. That's a very healthy thing you can do with your beans or lentils. Turmeric powder.
Yeah, because I went to Costa Rica and we ate beans every day for like 10 days or 11 days, and I never had a gas. Like I had no bloating, nothing. And we ate it like 3 times a day. Or 2 times a day. So it was like really weird. And then I come back home and it's the end of the world.
No, it's how you prepare.
So part of that is the preparation, but part of that is the fact that they have just been harvested. They're very fresh. So that's my experience in Honduras. 6 months at a time, never had a gas. 3 times a day, same thing, same story. But you know, it's very clear. They're fresh harvest. They harvest them all year round.
Yeah.
Some countries have that luxury. With our frozen soil, it's a little harder to have fresh ones all year round. But then I'm finding, like, so in Quebec, we've got these little black lentils. They're called beluga lentils. I've only discovered them about 5 years ago or something. But
What
they're
are they
traditional
called?
lentil.
What?
And beluga,
Oh.
after the beluga whale. They
Oh.
come from the Gaspé. And they are really, especially when you get them when they're first harvested, but still so even eating them now, like they're very easy to digest.
You can buy them in the
Anybody
stores.
can eat them.
You can
Mhm.
buy them in regular grocery stores, the beluga lentils. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I get them through Lufa Farm.
Okay.
They're
Okay.
connected
I
to a
even found them in
farm-
Michigan.
farm,
Oh, I see.
Oh,
Carla, I'd like to know whether fermented, say, kimchi or sauerkraut, that kind of thing would help us to build up a bit more diverse microbiome.
yes. Yes, great question. I didn't talk about that in the slideshow at all, but fermented foods, of course, are part of that wide variety that we need. And yeah, I would say about a tablespoon of fermented food a day is a great way to enhance digestion because they're rich in enzymes, right? And so they're rich in anything that's going to contribute, a lot of things that are going to contribute to a healthy microbiome, not just the fact that they contain microbes. Right?
Oh, okay. Mhm.
So yes, yes, they're there. That's part of it, but it's also how they help the digestion and therefore how they help the microbiome that you already have. And this also applies to miso, because we don't necessarily think of miso as a fermented food, but it is a fermented food, and it's
Yes.
fermented. It's interesting because we're always talking about bacteria, but the fungi, healthy fungi, are also part of our microbiome, and Saccharomyces, and which is the yeasty kind, the yeast that that transform that make beer and stuff like that, right? So that kind of the Saccharomyces species. So that's an aspergillus species. That's what's being used for miso and tempeh. Although tempeh we don't eat, we don't tend to eat raw. We cook it, right? But the miso you don't cook, right? You all know that. You don't bring it to a boil. You add it in the hot water, but not the boiling. When you make a miso soup or something,
Right.
it's a very good place, a very good one too, right? So yes,
Thank
all
you.
of those.
Thank you.
Lucia,
Thank you
you
very
had a
much, Carla.
question? Yeah, you're welcome.
Carla,
Go ahead, Lucia. It's Lucia's turn.
go ahead.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to maybe suggest if when you're doing your next one, if you can talk a little bit about the intermittent fasting, because there's a lot of proponents on social media, going as far as 36 hours, with fasting. So
Yes, yeah, that's great. I had thought that I would put fast in here too, because I had a question from a client. Can I do a dry fast? And I'm like, a dry fast? Like, what is that? So it links to intermittent fasting. Sorry. So yes. Good. I'm gonna note it down.
Thank you.
We'll do that. So Sophie still has your question?
Yeah, Carla, I wanted to go back to the beans. Oh, from the longest time, we traditionally, if the bean is a little old, because sometimes you do have them and they're not, fresh and harvested, we use a little baking soda in the water, in the soaking, and it helps.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
But it's in the soaking water. It's not in the cooking water.
In the soaking water, yeah. So overnight, you put some baking soda, and it really helps. Yeah, it's even, and also softens more because there are, they do come out hard sometimes when they're not fresh.
Yeah, and you throw out that soaking water, you rinse the beans, and so
Yeah.
there's no,
Yeah.
and a little bit of baking soda in your diet is not a problem.
I came across about that too, but they said that baking soda takes away some of the protein, so that it is really, you don't really have the full content of protein anymore in the food. That's what
It doesn't really make sense to me, but I will research that, but it doesn't really make sense
came
because
across with that, yeah. So I
Well, it
didn't.
turns the water alkaline. Would it do that?
It's not digesting the bean. The baking soda is not digesting the bean. It's not taking the protein out of the bean. It's working with the outer envelope, which is what makes the bean so difficult to digest. So, but I'll look into that.
Yeah. Sophie,
Yeah,
do you
here's
put
so
like
many things.
only one tablespoon like in the water,
Well, that's too much, I think.
or 1 teaspoon?
I put a teaspoon.
Okay, teaspoon. Okay.
Yeah, I like that suggestion though. It makes sense to me. Like we use, we cook them with sea salt, the beans, because they're again that sodium, that's then sodium chloride, but that it works on the on that outer envelope. That's really what we're trying to make more digestible,
Sodium bicarbonate, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so instead of sodium chloride, it's sodium bicarbonate.
And then you said you could add it to your
Yeah.
diet any time. You mean like actually putting it in your drinks and stuff?
Baking soda in some cases is so I'm just saying it's not dangerous for us. And many people have high acidity, so baking soda, getting a tiny bit of that baking soda, if it stays on the beans, is not a problem.
Oh,
so
yeah.
We're not talking about juice ones here.
No, my brother
Whole
has
other
that.
story. The whole other thing.
Okay, because he takes
But
baking
we
soda
sometimes
like every day, and I'm like, what? And he drinks it like every day. So I thought that was a bit much, but then again, I mean, he says
it
it
probably
helps him.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're saying that this
So
might be the new thing to even cure cancer, drinking sodium bicarbonate every day, soda bicarbonate.
Yeah.
listen, okay, so here we are. This is the whole thing that why I wanted to do this webinar in the first place. Look at all these different hypes that are out there. Who has studied them? Who knows for sure that this is true? Who has done long-term follow-up? Nobody.
Exactly.
Right? So you really have to be careful. I can see that there is a good discussion going on in the chat. I'm not really following it. I'm sorry. But yeah, so, anything can be good for a short period of time if we look at it as a therapy, right? It's therapeutic. It's, so not anything, but I mean, something can be good for that. That's not good for the sustainable long term. So here we're talking sustainable long term.
Sustainable.
What we're looking at today. Yeah.
None of these are sustainable over a long time. I have done for 3 years part of these different keto diets and all. And the body itself will tell you that this is not for the long time. Your stools change, your body keeps giving you indications that this is not a balanced diet. It is not balanced.
Right.
And then eventually you cannot sustain it and you start craving the very things, and you might go overboard and then start binging on the very things you deprived yourself of. And it does harm, I would say, from my experience.
Yeah,
over
my
the last 3
experience
years.
too, Deepa.
Yeah. Mind you,
Yeah.
intermittent fasting also I do, which I find very helpful. And there's a good book by Dr. Jason Fung. He is treating kidney patients and diabetic patients to reverse that. And that seems to work. I mean, it's all about, I don't know, in the long term, but it does.
So yeah, so that'll be nice to kind of look at the intermittent fasting next time.